Boom. The vast and overwhelming spiritual energy surged wildly into Mu Chen's body, quickly filling his meridians. The spiritual energy granted by the Nine Nether was clearly far beyond what he could handle himself. Of course, generally speaking, it's considered taboo to directly inject spiritual energy into someone else's body. No matter how strong the physical body is, the human body remains inherently fragile. If foreign spiritual energy invades, even the slightest malicious intent can cause the meridians to break. However, there was no such taboo between Mu Chen and Nine Nether. Their bloodlines were connected, and they shared mutual prosperity and harm. Therefore, they had absolute trust in each other. So when Nine Nether's immense spiritual energy poured into Mu Chen's body, he hesitated not at all. His hands formed seals at lightning speed, and his own spiritual energy erupted violently, flowing out like torrents, pouring into the dazzling mandala flower. Such support was a divine blessing for the mandala flower. Immediately, its already enchanting petals expanded further, becoming more beautiful, while the dark purple light that enveloped it grew increasingly radiant. The cracks caused by the invisible thunder python were also completely healed at this moment. Boom, boom. The invisible thunder python struggled violently, but this time it could no longer shake the seemingly fragile dark purple beam of light. Its enormous body slowly moved toward the mandala flower. It looked slow, but it was unstoppable. Mu Chen, watching the invisible thunder python approach the mandala flower, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he shifted his seals, and the invisible thunder python was completely absorbed into the flower's core. The alluring petals gradually closed, and mysterious ancient runes shot out, shining upon the python's body. Sizzle, sizzle. The runes seemed like they were branded onto the body of the invisible thunder python, causing it to screech in pain. Eventually, its body seemed to melt away, transforming into an invisible thunder egg, lying quietly in the heart of the mandala flower. Beside the thunder egg, the broken stone tablet stood silently. This thing is really powerful, Nine Nether marveled as she watched the scene. Having faced the invisible thunder python before, she knew just how powerful it was. Yet now, it had been returned to its original form by the mysterious mandala flower. The mandala flower possesses sealing powers. The Netherworld heart demon lightning has no true form, and it is most afraid of its ability. That's why everything went so smoothly. Mu Chen smiled and explained. With a flick of his hand, the mandala flower flew down and hovered in front of him. He glanced at the transformed thunder egg before turning his attention to the broken stone tablet. According to what Nine Nether had said earlier, the stone tablet recorded the so-called Supreme Heart Devil Sutra. Although Mu Chen had never heard of this name, it was clearly something extraordinary, considering it made Nine Nether so impressed. Mu Chen waved his sleeve, and the broken stone tablet flew up, standing in front of him. As he gazed at it, the tablet looked particularly ancient, its dark surface covered in interwoven traces of time. Ancient characters, faintly visible, emitted a strange pressure. Mu Chen's eyes were drawn to the top of the tablet, where the weathered, ancient script was the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra Nine Nether had mentioned, though due to the stone tablet's damage, it wasn't complete. Is the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra really that powerful? Mu Chen asked Nine Nether. Do you know of the Thunder God Palace? Mu Chen froze for a moment, then nodded. He wasn't the beginner he once was, and had gained some understanding of the vast world. The Thunder God Palace, as it turned out, was one of the most renowned superpowers in this world. The Thunder God Palace is the inheritance of the ancient Thunder Palace. And in ancient times, the Heart Demon Thunder Emperor was from the ancient Thunder Palace. From what I know, the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra is the palace's ultimate divine art, Nine Nether explained with a melodious voice. The palace's ultimate divine art. Mu Chen caught the last two words, and his heart skipped a beat. It was divine art, not just divine technique. In this vast world, divine art was even more profound and mysterious than divine techniques. However, such abilities were far out of reach for ordinary supremes and far too powerful. Whenever a new divine art was revealed, countless supreme experts would fight fiercely for it. The fact that the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra is incredibly rare, even within the Thunder God Palace. The number of people qualified to cultivate it is few and far between. Unfortunately, the version in front of us is incomplete. Based on my estimate, it might only reach the level of a semi-perfect divine art, Juyo said, expressing some regret. Semi-perfect divine art, huh? Mu Chen grinned at the words and said, "That's good enough. I actually prefer incomplete things. If the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra were complete, with his current strength, he wouldn't be able to cultivate it at all. So, an incomplete version was perfect for him." Juyo rolled her eyes at him helplessly. His shrewdness at this moment both annoyed and amused her. "As I know it, the most terrifying part of the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra is that once you successfully cultivate it, you can enter the Heart Demon state," Juyo said, her beautiful eyes fixed on the broken stone tablet in front of her, her expression growing serious. Heart Demon state? Mu Chen was stunned. It's an extremely dangerous state. Once you enter it, all external interference is blocked out. At that point, the person in that state is essentially under absolute control. Every bit of spiritual energy within their body, every ounce of strength in their flesh, will be used to its utmost. In a way, once you enter the Heart Demon state, you become a true weapon for battle, and your combat power will surge dramatically, Juyo explained slowly. The Palace Lord of Thunder God Palace, for example, is said to be just on the brink of entering the Heavenly Supreme Realm. But once he enters the ultimate Heart Demon state, he possesses the power to fight on par with a Heavenly Supreme level powerhouse. Mu Chen couldn't help but take a deep breath. Although that realm seemed far off for him at the moment, he could still sense how terrifying the gap between the two stages could be. Yet the Palace Lord of Thunder God Palace could still contend with a Heavenly Supreme by relying on the Heart Demon state. This showed just how fearsome the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra was. No wonder it was considered the palace's most powerful divine art. "This time, I really hit the jackpot," Mu Chen muttered, feeling excited. He hadn't expected to gain so much from this encounter. Not only had he obtained the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning, but he had also gotten his hands on a terrifying divine art, even if incomplete. However, the prerequisite for cultivating the Supreme Heart Devil Sutra is to first master the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning. So, if you want to train in it, you should start by merging with the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning, Juyo said, dousing Mu Chen's excitement with a cold shower. "Don't think it's going to be easy. When you fused with the Undying Fire, that was because we have a bloodline connection. The Undying Fire didn't really unleash its full power. But this Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning won't be so accommodating." Mu Chen furrowed his brows when he heard this, then smiled and said, "We've put in so much effort to obtain this Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning, so no matter how troublesome it is, I'm going to deal with it." "Now that's some courage," Juyo said with a thumbs up. However, from the smile in her eyes, it was clear she was more interested in watching how Mu Chen would handle the challenge. Mu Chen rolled his eyes at Juyo, who was clearly looking forward to the spectacle. He then adopted a serious expression. He knew that refining the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning wasn't going to be easy, but that was no reason to back down. With a deep breath, Mu Chen moved, appearing at the center of the mandala flower, sitting down cross-legged. With a flick of his hand, a thunder egg about the size of his head landed in his palm. The egg, though invisible in shape, hummed with sharp thunder sounds, as if it were screaming to break free from its seal, sending tremors through Mu Chen's spiritual energy. Even sealed, it's still this violent. Mu Chen frowned and looked at Juyo, nodding slightly at her. Seeing this, Juyo stepped back, though her beautiful eyes remained fixed on him. She clearly intended to step in and forcibly handle the situation if anything went wrong with Mu Chen's attempt to refine the lightning. If necessary, she would even erase the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning without hesitation. "Be careful," Juyo reminded him. Mu Chen nodded, closing his eyes slowly. His hands came together, as if holding the sun and moon. In his palms, the invisible thunder egg hovered calmly. A puff of white mist escaped Mu Chen's mouth. Then, he slammed his hands together with force, hitting the thunder egg. The powerful shockwaves from the strike caused cracks to quickly spread across the surface of the egg. The thunder egg finally shattered, and immediately, waves of invisible thunder spiritual energy surged out, transforming into a thunderstorm that engulfed Mu Chen. The invisible thunder spiritual energy continuously poured into his body. Supreme Sea. Within the vast Supreme Sea, violent waves surged, with spiritual energy pulsating in violet hues, howling and wreaking havoc. Clusters of purple flames adorned the surface of the sea. The sea churned, and Mu Chen's soul manifested. Standing on the waves, he looked up to see the sky above the Supreme Sea beginning to warp violently. Then, it tore apart, and an overwhelming torrent of invisible thunder spiritual energy descended from the sky, as if it were about to rip apart this supreme ocean. Roar! Sensing the danger, the purple flames within the Supreme Sea blazed fiercely. Mu Chen's soul was surrounded by the thick violet fire, and in his eyes, the roaring, invisible thunder spiritual energy was reflected. His palms clenched tightly. This is my territory. Here, whether you're a dragon or a tiger, you'd better stay down. The purple flames surged fiercely, seeming to form a confrontation with the mighty thunderbolts. Purple flames and invisible thunderlight surged from Mu Chen's hands. His black eyes reflected two completely different colors, and deep within his gaze, there was an undeniable hint of joy. He had truly succeeded in merging the Netherworld heart demon lightning. Nine Nether watched in astonishment, then smiled at Mu Chen and said, "Congratulations. I didn't expect you to actually succeed." At the beginning, she had only treated it as an experiment. After all, she knew how difficult it was to make two totally different energies coexist in the Supreme Sea. But the outcome had surprised her. This young man, since they first met, had been doing things that made people take notice. Just lucky, Mu Chen chuckled. His words weren't an exaggeration. If he hadn't had the Great Pagoda Tower, he wouldn't have been able to suppress these two violent energies. It was impossible to say how long it would have taken. But you still can't fully merge these two forces, Nine Nether said. Her sharp eyes caught the subtle discord between the two energies, which were far from perfect integration. Mu Chen nodded helplessly. He understood that if the two energies were perfectly merged, their power would increase significantly, but that was still too difficult for him at his current level. It's fine. For now, it's enough, Nine Nether smiled. Mu Chen had merged the Netherworld heart demon lightning with the intention of mastering the 9 dragons and 9 elephants art perfectly. Now that he possessed both energies, this divine technique, comparable to the quasi-great perfection level, would truly shine in his hands. Mu Chen nodded in agreement. Nine Nether was right. Successfully merging the Netherworld heart demon lightning was a tremendous gain. There was no need to be too greedy. He believed that as his strength grew, one day, he would effortlessly perfect the fusion of the two energies. However, now you're qualified to cultivate it, Nine Nether said, pointing to the broken stone tablet floating nearby. A trace of envy appeared in her slender eyes. She had long heard of the fame of the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra. Now, seeing it, she couldn't help but feel moved. But while she was moved, she understood that the sutra wasn't suited for her. Unlike Mu Chen, her undying fire was derived from her bloodline. If she tried to merge the Netherworld heart demon lightning like him, she would likely end up exploding from within. Though envious, she didn't covet it. She understood that if she could fully cultivate the undying fire, its true power would be no weaker than the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra. Mu Chen's gaze also shifted to the broken stone tablet, his eyes gleaming with interest. But he didn't rush to study it immediately. Instead, he turned to Nine Nether and asked, "How long have we been cultivating?" "We've been here for about half a month," Nine Nether calculated. "We've been lying low for half a month. Rest assured, don't underestimate our great Luo Heaven domain. While the 100 Battles domain is strong, it's still weaker than ours. Besides, we've just taken control of the Thunder Demon sect. That's already quite an achievement, so a brief period of rest is perfectly reasonable," Nine Nether said with a smile. Mu Chen nodded in response. He waved his sleeve and put away the broken stone tablet. "Let's go. We'll leave first and check on how the 9 Nether Guards are progressing with their cultivation." Half a month ago, he had taught the Thunder God body to the 9 Nether Guards. He wondered how many of them had successfully cultivated it, especially with the advantage of the terrain here. As his words fell, he immediately shot forward, transforming into a streak of light that tore through the dark, thunderous storm. Nine Nether watched his figure and smiled. Just as she was about to follow, her delicate brows furrowed. She turned her face slightly, gazing into the deeper darkness of the Thunder Sea. A trace of confusion flickered in her eyes. Earlier, she seemed to have felt a faint, unusual fluctuation coming from the deepest part of the Thunder Sea. However, the fluctuation was so subtle that even Nine Nether only vaguely sensed it. When she tried to sense it again, everything had fallen silent. She could only shake her head in confusion before quickly following Chen. As the two of them departed, the dark depths of the Thunder Sea were once again shrouded in complete darkness. Yet, in the deepest part, it seemed as if a ripple had stirred. Chen and Nine Nether pushed their speed to the limit. Half a day later, the surface of the Thunder Sea at the deepest part of the Thunder Demon Abyss was torn apart. Two streaks of light shot out, like flowing radiance, heading toward the top of the Thunder Demon Abyss. Boom! Not long after they broke free from the Thunder Sea, an extremely violent thunderclap rang out from above. On the stone walls of the abyss, massive earth-shaking magic thunderbolts like serpents surged out continuously. In the areas where these earth-shattering thunderbolts were wreaking havoc, over 1,000 figures sat in meditation. They were like immovable rocks, enduring the strikes of the earth-shattering magic thunder. Although some of them had their skin scorched black, they clenched their teeth and withstood the corrosion of the thunderbolts. These were the 9 Nether guards cultivating the Thunder God body. Chen and 9 Nether stood in midair, observing the impressive scene before them. Both felt a sense of satisfaction. With their keen eyes, they could tell that nearly half of the 9 Nether guards had successfully cultivated the Thunder God body. Of course, by successfully cultivated, it meant they had reached the first rune level of the Thunder God body. Among them, a few, like Chen, had already entered the Supreme Realm and made rapid progress. The Thunder runes on their chests had already reached the 3rd level. When Chen and 9 Nether appeared, the strongest among the 9 Nether guards, such as Chen, immediately sensed them. They opened their eyes and hurriedly stood to salute, but 9 Nether waved her hand to stop them. "How's the progress?" Chen asked. Reporting to the commander, "There are 513 people who have reached the 1st rune level of the Thunder God body, 98 who have reached the 2nd rune level, and only 3 of us who have reached the 3rd rune level." Chen replied quickly. Chen nodded gently. He was quite satisfied with the progress. The current 9 Nether guards were stronger than when he first cultivated the Thunder God body. With the help of the Thunder Demon Abyss, this speed was within his expectations. At this rate, within a year, all the 9 Nether guards would be able to cultivate the Thunder God body to the level of the 9 runes. By then, their combat strength would undoubtedly be astonishing. However, the conquest war was far from over, and Chen could sense that there would be even more intense battles ahead. Therefore, he needed all the 9 Nether guards to reach at least the 1st rune level of the Thunder God body. "We should still have about half a month to rest," 9 Nether, seeing Chen's contemplative expression, said as if reading his thoughts. "I'll stay here for the next half-month," Chen said decisively. "All right, then I'll head to oversee the Thunder Demon sect to ensure no trouble arises from my absence. The resources there are abundant and could attract unwanted attention. Tang Bing alone might not be able to maintain order, so I can't stay away for too long," 9 Nether smiled. Chen nodded, and 9 Nether, seeing this, didn't linger. With a graceful movement, she transformed into a streak of light and darted out of the Thunder Demon Abyss. Chen watched her leave, then turned around and sat down in midair. His gaze swept over the 9 Nether guards, and his deep voice echoed in every soldier's ears. "There is no shortcut in body cultivation. If you want strength, you must put in the effort. I will now activate all the earth-shaking magic thunder here to attack you." "Yes," all the 9 Nether guards exclaimed in low voices, their expressions resolute. Chen smiled in relief at the sight, but his expression soon became serious. He clenched his hand, and the spiritual energy infused with Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning surged out. With a wave of his sleeve, the energy exploded into the sky, instantly enveloping the entire area. Boom! The invisible spiritual energy rampaged, and the earth demon lightning hidden in the stone walls was forced out. These previously ferocious lightning strikes now trembled, too fearful to touch Chen's energy. Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning was a higher-level form of thunder power compared to Earth Demon Lightning, which naturally instilled fear in the latter. Boom. The 9 nether guards stared in shock at the scene. The earth demon lightning, once seen as fierce as tigers, now behaved like pigs or sheep in Mu Chen's hands, easily driven away at will. However, their shock did not last long. Their faces began to distort as black thunderous light poured from all directions, almost obscuring their vision. Then, with ruthless force, it poured down upon them. The black thunder covered the sky, drowning the 9 nether guards entirely. Mu Chen looked at the scene and smiled faintly. To cultivate the physical body, there are no shortcuts, only the painful path. It was like that for me back then, and it will be the same for the 9 nether guards. For the next half-month, he would have all of the 9 nether guards successfully cultivate the Thunder God body. Only then would their battle intent truly improve. Mu Chen exhaled lightly, staring at the raging thunder. After a brief contemplation, he waved his sleeve, and the broken stone tablet appeared before him. During the 9 nether guards' cultivation of the Thunder God body, he could take this time to better comprehend the so-called Supreme Heart Demon Sutra and see just how powerful it truly was. Time quietly passed in the Thunder Demon Abyss, filled with the deafening roar of thunder. Boom. In the Thunder Demon Abyss, the violent thunder never ceased. Deep within, thousands of figures sat in midair, black lightning slithering like serpents, weaving in and out. These figures sat as still as rocks, allowing the earth demon lightning to strike them, yet their bodies did not move an inch. Each of them formed the same hand seals, as threads of black lightning silently entered their bodies through their pores, refining their flesh and bones. Hundreds of meters away, Mu Chen also sat in midair. However, his eyes were slightly closed. With one hand extended, a much smaller broken stone tablet stood silently in his palm. His eyelashes fluttered, and after a moment, his tightly closed eyes slowly opened. He gazed at the stone tablet in his hand, astonished. Over the past few days, as he helped the 9 nether guards refine their bodies, the rest of his time had been devoted to studying the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra, recorded in this broken stone tablet. After days of contemplation, he had gained some preliminary understanding of the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra. As 9 Nether had said, the stone tablet's version of the sutra was indeed incomplete. Moreover, the Heart Demon state 9 Nether spoke of did indeed exist, but it was divided into 3 stages: the lesser Heart Demon state, the greater Heart Demon state, and the most perfect Heart Demon state. According to 9 Nether, the Lord of the Thunder God Palace had likely already cultivated the Heart Demon state to its perfect form. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to challenge a true Heavenly Supreme with only half a foot in the Heavenly Supreme realm. Looking at the current incomplete Supreme Heart Demon Sutra, even if one reached the limit of cultivation, they would only attain the greater Heart Demon state. To reach the perfect Heart Demon state, a complete version of the sutra was necessary. But with Mu Chen's current strength, even if he obtained the complete version, it was impossible for him to cultivate it. So, he didn't feel regretful about it, because even the first 2 stages of this cultivation were enough to make him grit his teeth and endure the hardships of training. Truly monstrous. Mu Chen reflected on the ancient knowledge swirling in his mind, finally unable to suppress a long sigh. His expression became somewhat strange. To cultivate the Heart Demon state, one must first cultivate the Heart Demon seed. This seed requires countless strikes from the Netherworld Heart Demon lightning against the heart, allowing the force of the lightning to penetrate deeply into the heart and gradually condense within it until it forms the Heart Demon seed. This cultivation method is considered a suicide mission by many because the heart is the most vulnerable part of the human body. Even the slightest injury can be fatal. Who would dare to use the overwhelming power of the Netherworld Heart Demon lightning to attack the heart? If something goes wrong, the heart might shatter into pieces with a single thunderclap. Even with the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra, most people wouldn't dare to attempt such a risky cultivation method. Mu Chen, holding the stone tablet, couldn't help but click his tongue. A slight hesitation flashed in his eyes, but this hesitation was immediately swept away by a surge of determination. He had promised that girl he would become a peerless powerhouse, and he knew all too well that talent alone would never get him there in a world filled with so many geniuses. True power comes from fearlessness. Thus, he wouldn't fear anything. A brilliant smile spread across Mu Chen's youthful and handsome face. His gaze suddenly became sharp, and his eyes slowly closed. With his mind focusing, spiritual energy infused with the Netherworld heart demon lightning began circulating through his meridians, growing into a torrent of energy that rushed toward his heart, striking like lightning. Hiss! The shrill, thunderous sound echoed across his heart, reverberating through his body. The thunder resounded within Mu Chen, shaking his internal organs and even impeding the flow of his blood. Uft! A mouthful of blood spurted from Mu Chen's mouth, his face turning pale as veins bulged on his skin, giving him an eerie appearance. He gasped heavily, clutching his chest, enduring the excruciating, heart-rending pain. The thunder seemed to tear his heart apart. Damn it! The agony forced Mu Chen to curse. The Supreme Heart Demon Sutra truly lived up to its name, filled with malevolent energy. This self-destructive cultivation method was unlike anything he had ever encountered. After a deep breath, his body gradually began to calm. He gritted his teeth again and once more called upon the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning, sending it charging toward his heart. Uft! Uft! In the dark thunder demon abyss, Mu Chen's figure kept spitting blood, yet he continued without hesitation. His strange condition stunned the nearby 9 nether guards, who could only watch in silence, too afraid to say anything, retreating to meditate again. Thus, nearly half a month passed, amidst bloodshed and the violent thunderous sounds. Unbeknownst to him, Mu Chen and the others had been training in the Thunder Demon Abyss for a full month. During this time, the conquest war initiated by the Great Luo Heaven Domain had intensified. As the most powerful force in the northern domain of Tianluo continent, the Great Luo Heaven Domain naturally had more strength than the 100 Battles Domain. So, after the war began, the 100 Battles Domain was predictably pushed back step by step. Although there were occasional counterattacks, they still couldn't alter the overall situation. However, the 100 Battles Domain was not a mere pushover. As their defenses continued to retreat, the gathered strength of their forces grew increasingly formidable. Consequently, the Great Luo Heaven Domain's advance slowed down, no longer able to crush the enemy with the same unstoppable force it had at the start. In response to this, the Great Luo Heaven Domain began consolidating its power, no longer dispersing its forces recklessly. The high-ranking officials knew very well that the core of the 100 Battles Domain was the Valley of 10,000 Swords, the Demon Corpse Sect, and the Great Sorrow Heaven, 3 powerful factions. Since the war started, these 3 top factions in the 100 Battles Domain had not yet made a move. Only by defeating them would the 100 Battles Domain truly fall. Thus, the Great Luo Heaven Domain began gathering all its strength, preparing to defeat these 3 top forces and bring the war to a close, solidifying the reputation of the Great Luo Heaven Domain. In the Northern Domain, countless gazes turned towards the unfolding battle. After all, with the status of the Great Luo Heaven Domain and 100 Battles Domain, their duel would undoubtedly have a significant impact on the entire Northern Domain. Thus, even before the battle began, it had already stirred the clouds, and countless eyes from all directions were drawn to the event. While the outside world buzzed with the anticipation of the imminent battle, Mu Chen remained silently seated beneath the Thunder Demon Abyss. His body would occasionally tremble, and his handsome face would twitch in response. This was due to the impact of the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning striking his heart. However, compared to before when he would cough up blood after each shock, he had clearly improved, gradually adapting to the intense pressure. Mu Chen's tremors lasted for a while before he slowly opened his eyes. He exhaled softly, rubbing his tired forehead. These past days had truly worn him out. That damn Supreme Heart Devil Sutra was not something a human could cultivate. But after enduring all the pain, it seemed to have yielded some results. Although he still hadn't formed the Heart Demon Seed, he could feel that the power of the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning was gathering deep within his heart. If he continued practicing like this, it should eventually lead to the formation of the Heart Demon Seed. Mu Chen lightly patted his chest, and then looked up at the 9 Nether's guards not far away. His brow furrowed slightly when he noticed that faint thunder runes were flickering on the chests of all the 9 Nether's guards. The number of thunder runes varied. Some of the strongest, like Qiu Shan, had even shown signs of forming a fourth rune. The speed at which they were advancing was incredibly fast. However, Chen knew that from this point on, the cultivation speed of their thunder god bodies would slow down significantly. To reach the level of the 9-rune thunder body, there was still a long way to go. But for now, it was sufficient. Chen stood up, and with a flick of his sleeve, the earth demon lightning that had been bombarding the 9 Nether's guards instantly dispersed, retreating into the stone walls. At this moment, the 9 Nether's guards slowly opened their eyes, and black thunder light flickered in their gazes. "Congratulations," Chen said with a slight smile. "You've all successfully cultivated the thunder god body." Swish! The 9 Nether's guards immediately stood up and knelt on one knee in unison, their voices echoing through the depths of the thunder demon abyss, causing the thunderous sounds to momentarily quiet. "Thank you, Commander." Chen waved his hand, feeling the change in the atmosphere around the 9 Nether's guards. He was secretly pleased that his efforts had not been in vain. "It's time to leave," Chen muttered to himself. Just as Chen spoke, a voice suddenly echoed in his ear. "Prepare to depart. The Great Luo Heaven Domain is about to battle the 100 Battles Domain. Thunder Demon Sect, Great Hall." Now, the Great Luo Heaven Domain has already occupied nearly half of the 100 Battles Domain's territory. In the hall, a spiritual energy screen spread out, and the slender jade finger of 9 Nether pointed to a map of the 100 Battles Domain. Nearly all the cities that once belonged to the 100 Battles Domain were now under the control of the Great Luo Heaven Domain. It was easy to imagine just how many fierce battles had been fought over this territory in the past month. Chen also stared at the map, faintly smelling the bloodshed in the air. The occupation of each city was likely marked by bloody clashes. This was war, brutal and unforgiving. This was no longer the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. But this war, 9 Nether said calmly, may just be beginning. Chen, Tang Bing, and the other powerful figures from the 9 Nether Palace all nodded solemnly. They knew that in the past month, the 3 strongest forces in the 100 Battles Domain hadn't even made a move. Otherwise, the speed at which the Great Luo Heaven Domain conquered would not have been so rapid. "What's the situation with the Valley of 10,000 Swords, Demon Corpse Sect, and Great Sorrow Heaven?" Chen asked. Given how compressed the defenses had become, these 3 major forces couldn't possibly still be sitting idly by. According to the latest intelligence, all the forces from the Valley of 10,000 Swords, the Demon Corpse Sect, and Great Sorrow Heaven are converging here. Jiu Yu's slender, beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, her delicate finger pointing to a specific location on the map, there. It was the sharpest point of the current defense line of the 100 Battles Domain. 100 Battles City. Chen stared at the city marked on the map. It was said that 100 Battles City was the most magnificent stronghold in the 100 Battles Domain, co-controlled by the 3 major powers. Now, it was likely the strongest defense of the entire domain. Even with the power of their Great Luo Heaven Domain, facing such a formidable stronghold would be extremely troublesome. Now, all the experts from the Valley of 10,000 Swords, Demon Corpse Sect, Great Sorrow Heaven, and many other forces in the 100 Battles Domain are gathered here. This is an enormous amount of power. Jiu Yu's delicate face turned serious. And the 100 Battles Domain has issued a war declaration to our Great Luo Heaven Domain. I'm afraid now that countless eyes from all over the Northern Domain are watching. If we step back even slightly, show any sign of weakness, it could ruin our Great Luo Heaven Domain's reputation forever. War declaration? Chen's expression shifted. The 100 Battles Domain actually had the audacity to send a war declaration first? It seems that with Xiantian Palace secretly backing them, the 100 Battles Domain has gained some courage, Jiu Yu sneered. Chen nodded slightly. When the Conquest War began, the domain master of their Great Luo Heaven Domain had mentioned that Lu Tiandao of Xiantian Palace was watching in the shadows, so he couldn't act recklessly. Without the domain master, who held the power to change the course of events, their Great Luo Heaven Domain no longer had the same absolute advantage. No wonder the 100 Battles Domain dared to issue a war declaration. They must believe that if they win, they could trample over the Great Luo Heaven Domain and rise to power, with their reputation soaring. Therefore, This battle was not going to be easy for their great Luo heaven domain. What do the three sovereigns say? Chen asked. This conquest war was under the control of the three sovereigns, and now that the 100 Battles domain had boldly issued a challenge, they should have taken action by now. The three sovereigns have ordered all the experts from the great Luo heaven domain to gather outside 100 Battles City. The area within 1,000 miles is already engulfed in the flames of war, Jiuyu replied. Chen nodded slightly. Given the status of the great Luo heaven domain, rejecting a war declaration was almost unthinkable. The upcoming battle would likely be far more intense and brutal than anyone had anticipated. This was the true collision of two colossal powers. All the previous skirmishes were nothing more than minor clashes. And what about us? Chen looked at Jiuyu. Since the great Luo heaven domain was mobilizing all its forces, their Xun'er palace couldn't remain neutral. Move out. We're heading to 100 Battles City. Jiuyu stood up straight without hesitation. With a wave of her hand, her cold, crisp voice echoed throughout the hall. As part of the great Luo heaven domain, they could never retreat from such a pivotal war. Understood. The strong warriors of Xun'er Palace in the hall all responded with clenched fists. Chen also looked out beyond the hall. In the distant northwest, the sky seemed darkened and oppressive, as though the very atmosphere was thick with the will to fight. However, his blood began to boil, bit by bit. He needed this battle. It was an indispensable trial stone on his path to becoming a peerless powerhouse. One day, his name would spread across every corner of the Tianluo continent, and only then would he have the right to fulfill the promise he made to that girl. Luo Li, wait for me. 100 Battles City. A towering, awe-inspiring city, said to be inherited from ancient times, having withstood countless earth-shaking battles, yet still stood silently on the land. And now, this ancient city was once again engulfed in the flames of war. A massive light array descended from the sky, like an overturned giant bowl, enveloping the entire city. At this moment, countless figures swept across the city, and powerful spiritual energy fluctuations soared into the sky. Outside the city, in the distant sky, countless figures hovered in the air. The overwhelming spiritual energy distorted the very sky. The battlefield stretched outward from 100 Battles City, expanding until it reached the horizon. Although this place is somewhat far from 100 Battles City, the flames of war have never ceased here. The forces from both sides continue to eradicate each other's troops. Now, on this vast plain, the battle is especially intense. The two opposing forces clearly aren't ordinary soldiers, but two armies brimming with battle intent. The group on the left is fully armored in yellow, resembling golden armor. They wield heavy halberds, and their immense, overwhelming battle intent sweeps through the air like a tornado, ravaging the land and sky. On their golden armor, intricate flowing gold patterns can be seen. They are the Golden Guard under the command of the Flowing Gold King, one of the 9 kings of the great Luo heaven domain. Though the Golden Guard is not as famous as other elite forces in the great Luo heaven domain, such as the Xun'er Guard, Mountain Splitting Legion, or Blood Eagle Guard, they are still a formidable force. Their battle achievements are quite glorious. However, this time, the Golden Guard finds themselves in a difficult situation. Their opponents are a group clad in blue, with long swords slung diagonally on their backs. The terrifying sword energy wreaks havoc in the sky, leaving the heavens itself in tatters. These are the 3,000 sword servants from the Valley of 10,000 Swords. Their distinct appearance clearly marks them as the elite soldiers of the Valley of 10,000 Swords. This is their strongest army, and their combat strength is among the best in the 100 Battles domain. In terms of reputation, the 3,000 sword servants are clearly stronger than the Golden Guard. Whoosh, whoosh. The sword energy fills the sky, sweeping across the battlefield. It relentlessly weakens the Golden Guard's battle intent, which had been as powerful as a golden torrent. Faced with such an onslaught from the 3,000 sword servants, the Golden Guard can barely defend. On this plane, other forces are also clashing, but because the 3,000 sword servants are suppressing the Golden Guard, the morale of the 100 Battles domain troops rises sharply, while the great Luo heaven domain forces are steadily retreating. Haha. Qianlong. Commander, Your Golden Guard is on the brink of collapse. I suggest you surrender to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. What do you think? A light laugh echoed through the sky as it followed the sword energy. Above the 3,000 sword servants, a figure in blue robes hovered in the air. He carried a purple-blue longsword and smiled at the Golden Guard, who were desperately holding their ground. This was Lin Qingfeng, the leader of the 3,000 sword servants. In the 100 battles domain, his name is as significant as Su Qing and Zhou Yu are in the Great Luo Heaven domain. High in the air above the Golden Guard, a burly man with a grim expression glared at Lin Qingfeng, his teeth gritted in frustration. He never imagined he would be so unlucky, just trying to clean up remnants, only to run into the sudden appearance of the 3,000 sword servants. He knew full well how formidable they were. In the entire Great Luo Heaven domain, only the Azura Guard led by Commander Su Qing and the mountain-splitting legion under Zhou Yu could possibly contend with them. If the 3,000 sword servants had come with their full strength, the Golden Guard would already have been utterly defeated. But even so, they could only stubbornly resist. Lin Qingfeng, don't get too smug. Strong reinforcements from the Great Luo Heaven domain will arrive soon. Let's see how you handle it then. Qianlong gritted his teeth and shouted. You've reminded me, Lin Qingfeng said with a slight smile. In that case, let's deal with you first. He raised his 2 fingers and flicked them in the air. Immediately, a vast torrent of sword energy and battle intent surged, transforming into a gigantic sword that soared into the sky. The immense sword energy was so powerful that it even tore through space itself. Qianlong's face changed drastically upon seeing this. A wave of danger washed over him, and he immediately roared, flowing gold divine shield. Boom. The golden battle intent surged into the sky, quickly forming an enormous golden shield in front of the Golden Guard. The shield appeared as thick and solid as a mountain, making it almost impossible to fathom its strength. Swish. However, the massive sword did not hesitate for even a moment. With Lin Qingfeng's calm expression, it descended fiercely, crashing into the golden shield. At that moment, terrifying sword energy erupted. Crack! The sword energy rampaged, and Qianlong's face turned pale as he saw cracks rapidly spreading across the golden shield. Eventually, in his shocked gaze, the massive sword cleaved the shield in half. It's over. Qianlong's face turned ashen. This time, the Golden Guard would suffer heavy losses. Lin Qingfeng, still with a calm expression, prepared to swing the gigantic sword again, ready to sweep through the Golden Guard. But just as he was about to strike, his gaze suddenly sharpened. From far in the distance, a violent, thunderous roar rang through the sky. A bolt of black thunder shot through the sky from afar like an enraged dragon, heading straight for Lin Qingfeng. Lin Qingfeng furrowed his brows slightly, and the massive sword he wielded instantly shifted, clashing head-on with the black thunder dragon. Boom! A storm of spiritual energy erupted, and countless powerful figures across the land looked up in astonishment, gazing at the sky in the distance. Who dares to stand in my way? Lin Qingfeng's calm voice echoed, his sharp sword energy spreading out and slicing through the clouds. His piercing gaze turned towards the increasingly darkened sky. There, the sound of thunder continued to roar.